When you begin to understand your worth, something extraordinary happens inside you, almost like a quiet awakening that reshapes the way you move through the world. And I want you to hear this as if it were spoken directly into your heart, because too many people spend their lives shrinking themselves to fit into relationships that were never worthy of their light. Knowing your worth is not about arrogance. It is about alignment. It is about finally realizing that love is not supposed to drain you, confuse you, or make you question your value every time you give a piece of your heart. It is the foundation on which every healthy connection is built, because when you know your worth, you stop negotiating with disrespect. You stop allowing people to treat you like an option, and you begin to show up as someone who expects love to be mutual, effort to be balanced, and commitment to be real. You start to trust your instincts more deeply, because the moment your value becomes clear to you, you can feel the difference between someone who chooses you and someone who merely entertains you. You walk differently, not with arrogance, but with a quiet strength that makes people pay attention, because energy speaks before words ever do. People sense when you carry yourself with self-respect, and the ones who are incapable of offering you the love you deserve will fall away, not because you pushed them, but because they can no longer access you. The version of you who doubted, who feared being alone, who believed love had to hurt to be real, begins to disappear, and in her place rises a woman who knows she brings something rare, something unforgettable, something that can never be replaced. When you understand your worth, you no longer fear losing someone who cannot see it, because you finally realize that the only person you could ever truly lose is yourself, and you refuse to abandon your heart just to keep someone else comfortable. You stop apologizing for having standards and start embracing them as the filter that protects your peace. You begin to see that the way someone treats you is not a reflection of your value, but a reflection of their capacity, and you choose to connect only with those who have the emotional ability to love you with consistency, honesty, and depth. You stop chasing closure from people who never cared enough to offer it, and instead you give yourself the closure you deserved all along, simply by saying, "I matter, and I will no longer settle for anything less than what aligns with that truth." Knowing your worth is also about reclaiming your voice, because too often love teaches us to shrink ourselves, to stay quiet, to avoid conflict in the hope that gentleness will earn appreciation. But understanding your worth gives you courage to speak your truth without trembling, to say what you need without guilt, to walk away when those needs are belittled or ignored. You understand that boundaries are not walls, they are doors with locks, and only those who come with respect, patience, and genuine intention will ever hold the key. You become intentional about the love you allow into your life, and your heart becomes a space only for those who approach with sincerity, not convenience. When a woman knows her worth, she becomes difficult to manipulate because she no longer responds to empty promises, inconsistent affection, or temporary attention. She watches actions more than words, she values effort over excuses, and she understands that love is not proven by how loudly someone speaks, but by how consistently they show up. You carry yourself with a certainty that makes people realize they have to come correct, because they understand that you are not impressed by superficial charm, but by emotional presence and genuine commitment. The people around you begin to treat you differently, not because they have changed, but because you have. Your energy demands respect long before your words do. And perhaps the most powerful shift of all is the one that happens inside your heart. When you truly know your worth, you stop waiting for someone else to validate it. You stop looking at love as something that completes you and start seeing it as something that should complement you. You understand that being alone is not the worst thing that can happen. Settling is. Losing time with the wrong person is. Betraying your own needs is. And because you know this, your heart becomes stronger, wiser, and more selective. You attract partners who see your value because you no longer hide it. Partners who appreciate your softness because they recognize it as strength. Partners who respect your boundaries because they understand they were created from self-love, not fear. So speak to yourself with compassion. Hold yourself the way you wish someone else would. Lift your head as if you know you belong in the world, because you do. Every time you choose self-respect over desperation, every time you choose peace over chaos, Every time you choose honesty over pretending everything is fine, you strengthen the foundation of your worth. And one day, someone will come into your life who treats you like the queen you already are. Not because you begged, not because you tolerated less first, but because you finally became the woman who understood that her heart is a gift, and only those who know how to treasure it are allowed to hold it. When you begin to set boundaries, real boundaries, something shifts in the atmosphere around you, and I want you to understand the power of this shift, because for far too long many people have been taught that kindness means tolerating everything, staying quiet, accepting disrespect, and putting their own needs last just to keep the peace. But setting boundaries is not about being selfish or harsh. It is about protecting your emotional well-being. And if you don't do that for yourself, no one else will. Boundaries tell the world how to treat you. And if you don't communicate them, people will project their own convenience onto you. When you draw a line with clarity and confidence, you are not pushing people away. You are simply guiding them on how to love you properly. You must allow yourself to understand that boundaries are not punishments. They are standards. They are the guidelines that protect your heart from being drained by people who take more than they give. Too often, you've given people unlimited access to your energy, your time, your love, without ever asking yourself whether they earned that access, whether they respected the space you opened for them. Boundaries are how you stop that cycle. They allow you to say no without guilt, to walk away without fear, to protect the parts of you that once felt obligated to overextend just to feel appreciated. And when you begin to honor your own boundaries, something powerful happens inside you, because for the first time you stop choosing everyone else over yourself. Setting boundaries means you no longer let someone's inconsistency become your confusion. You no longer let someone's lack of effort become your emotional burden. You stop accepting breadcrumbs and calling it love. You stop explaining and over-explaining, hoping they will understand what you need. Instead, you make your needs clear. You state what is acceptable and what is not. You communicate with calmness, not anger, because boundaries spoken with clarity create respect, while boundaries spoken with fear create conflict. You no longer wait for people to guess what hurts you or what crosses your limits. You speak your truth, and in speaking it, you reclaim the voice you once silenced. And yes, some people will resist your boundaries because they benefited from you having none. They liked the version of you who said yes even when you were exhausted. The version of you who tolerated disrespect, who forgave the same mistakes repeatedly, who showed up even when they never reciprocated. When you finally say, enough, the ones who were living off your emotional labor will react with frustration or blame. But do not confuse their discomfort with your wrongdoing. Their reaction is not a sign that your boundaries are wrong. It is a sign that your boundaries are working. The wrong people fall away when you honor yourself, and that is protection, not loss. When you set boundaries, you change the way you show up in relationships because you begin to value yourself more. You stop begging for loyalty because you understand that loyalty is not something you demand. It is something someone chooses to give. You stop tolerating emotional laziness because you know your heart deserves effort. You stop letting people use your empathy as a free pass to mistreat you. You become more selective, more aware, more intentional. You learn to identify who adds peace to your life and who adds chaos. And you create space only for those who understand that your boundaries are not walls, but invitations for healthier, deeper connection. Boundaries also transform your inner world. They teach you emotional independence. They help you break the patterns that once tied you to unhealthy dynamics. You begin to trust yourself more because you realize that you are capable of protecting your own peace. You stop relying on someone else's validation to feel valuable. You become responsible for your own happiness instead of waiting for someone to change. And the moment you take ownership of your emotional well-being, everything changes. You feel lighter, stronger, more grounded. You stop overthinking every conflict because now you know that clarity comes from communication, not from trying to read someone's mind or hoping they read yours. When a woman sets boundaries, she becomes more confident because she stands in alignment with her values, her needs, her standards. And confidence is not about speaking loudly or making demands. It is about knowing what you will and will not allow and living according to that truth. The right people will always respect your boundaries because they understand that boundaries make love healthier, not harder. They feel more secure around you because they know where they stand. They respect you more deeply because they see that you respect yourself. Boundaries create emotional safety, and emotional safety is the foundation on which real love is built. But most importantly, boundaries change how you see yourself. You stop feeling guilty for protecting your heart. You stop feeling selfish for choosing your peace. You begin to understand that the more respect you give to yourself, the more respect you attract from others. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop abandoning yourself just to be chosen. Boundaries become an expression of self-love, and that kind of self-love radiates. It changes your posture, your tone, your energy. It tells the world, I know who I am, I know what I deserve, and I will not allow anyone to treat me as less. And when you begin to live like this, something beautiful happens. People start treating you differently. They show up with more intention. They bring more effort. They listen more closely. They understand that access to your heart is a privilege, not an entitlement. You receive the kind of love you once prayed for because now you are aligned with it. Boundaries do not push away the right love. They prepare you for it. They protect you from the ones who cannot love you, so you can be ready for the one who will. When you begin to understand the power of consistency, everything about the way you relate to people changes, because consistency is not just a behavior. It is a reflection of someone's character, their priorities, and their emotional truth. Consistency is the quiet language of care, the steady heartbeat of real connection, and the difference between someone who simply wants your attention and someone who is ready to show up for you. Many of you have spent months, even years, trying to decode mixed signals, trying to understand why someone treats you beautifully one day and disappears the next, why they speak with passion but never follow through, why their promises sound sweet but their actions never align. But let me tell you something with absolute clarity. The person who genuinely values you does not confuse you, and the person who wants to keep you in their life does not make you feel like an option. Consistency is where truth reveals itself without you having to dig, chase, or beg for clarity. When someone is consistent, you feel it. You don't have to monitor their behavior. You don't have to question their intentions. And you don't have to anxiously wait for the next text, the next call, or the next explanation. There is an ease, a calmness, a sense of emotional safety that grows inside you, because consistency removes the uncertainty that comes from dealing with someone who only shows up when it benefits them. Many of you have gotten so used to the emotional highs and lows that inconsistency brings that you've mistaken chaos for passion. You've mistaken unpredictability for excitement. You've mistaken emotional, unavailable behavior for mystery. But what you really deserve is peace, and peace comes from someone who chooses you with the same energy on Monday as they do on Friday. Someone who doesn't disappear when life gets busy. Someone who doesn't go cold when things get real. Someone who doesn't pull away the moment they feel your heart opening. Consistency is not about perfection. It is about reliability, and reliability is one of the deepest forms of love. When someone is inconsistent, it creates emotional instability inside you, and it becomes easy to personalize their behavior. You start believing that if you were prettier, more interesting, less emotional, more patient, or more understanding, maybe they would show up more consistently. But inconsistency is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of their readiness. Some people love the idea of love, but they avoid the responsibility that real love requires. Some people want your affection, your attention, your presence, but they are not willing to offer you stability, effort, or emotional accountability. And the moment you internalize that, the moment you stop making excuses for someone else's lack of consistency, you reclaim your power. Because the truth is, a person who wants you will find a way, and a person who doesn't will find an excuse. Consistency is the bridge between intention and action, and people who are serious about you walk that bridge every single day. Consistency shows up in small moments, not just grand gestures. It's in the way someone checks on you without being reminded, the way they remember the details you share, the way they keep their word, even in situations where it would be easier not to. It is in the stability of their patterns, the predictability of their care, the way they make space for you even when life is complicated. Someone who is consistent does not have to tell you you're important. You feel it through the way they treat you. They don't just talk about plans. They follow up. They don't love you only when it's convenient. They love you even when it requires patience, vulnerability, and effort. And that is the kind of love that lasts, the kind that empowers you instead of draining you. But here is something you must also understand. Consistency requires emotional maturity, and not everyone has reached that place yet, even if their emotions are genuine. Someone may feel something for you, but if they have not done the inner work, if they carry unresolved wounds, fear of vulnerability, or lack of self-awareness, they will behave inconsistently, not because they do not care, but because they do not yet know how to offer stable, steady love. And that is why consistency is not just about what someone feels for you. It is about what they can sustain. You cannot build a healthy relationship on temporary effort. You cannot build emotional security on and off affection. You cannot build a future with someone whose presence depends on their mood. Love is not real until it shows up consistently, and your heart deserves the kind of love that can stand, not just the kind that sparks. The more you honor this truth, the more your standards rise. You stop giving endless chances to people who keep showing you the same inconsistency. You stop justifying behavior that keeps you in emotional limbo. You stop hoping that someone will suddenly become stable just because you've been loyal. Loyalty does not fix inconsistency. Patience does not fix inconsistency. Love does not fix inconsistency. Only someone's willingness to grow, to commit, to show up can fix inconsistency. And if they are not willing to do that, you must be willing to walk away, because your emotional peace is worth more than someone's half-hearted effort. And when you finally choose consistency for yourself, you begin to attract it from others. Your energy shifts. You stop giving attention to those who only show up when they feel like it. You stop opening your heart to people who drain you more than they pour into you. You stop tolerating unpredictability because you know you deserve emotional safety. And the moment you raise that standard, the right kind of people step into your life. People who respect your time, your heart, and your boundaries. People who choose you because they see your value, not because they need a temporary distraction. Consistency becomes your filter, your guide, your protection. And through that, you finally experience the kind of love that doesn't confuse you, but completes you. When you begin to value the space you create for yourself, everything about how people treat you shifts, because space is not distance, it is dignity, and most importantly, it is a powerful reminder that your presence is not something anyone should take for granted. So many of you have been conditioned to believe that closeness means constant availability, that love means being endlessly accessible, that proving your worth means always being there, always answering, always accommodating. But the truth is, when you never allow space, you unintentionally teach someone that your presence requires no effort, that your energy has no boundaries, that your absence is never felt. And nothing makes a man crave you in a deeper, more meaningful way than when he realizes that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. When a man starts to get too comfortable, not in the healthy way that builds intimacy, but in the careless way that breeds complacency, space becomes your greatest strength. Space interrupts patterns. Space resets dynamics. Space reminds him that the attention he enjoys, the affection he receives, the comfort he relies on all come from a woman who has a full life beyond him. A woman who knows her own worth does not need to force distance to play games. She simply lives her life in a way that is too full, too meaningful, too purposeful to revolve around someone who is not showing up with the same level of care. And when you do that, something powerful happens. He starts to feel the absence of what he once took for granted. He starts noticing the silence where your voice used to be, the emptiness where your reassurance used to live, the gaps where your availability used to fill his emotional needs without him ever having to ask for it or earn it. You see, people appreciate what they participate in, and when a man no longer has to participate in the connection, when he no longer feels the need to put in effort because he already receives so much, he loses that sense of desire, that natural pull. That emotional urgency that makes him pursue you in a meaningful way. Space reactivates that energy. Space makes him think. Space makes him reflect on what life feels like when you are not constantly accessible. And for many men, that is the moment clarity strikes. Not when you talk endlessly about what he is not doing. Not when you beg for effort. Not when you cry for attention. But when you simply step back, redirect your energy toward yourself, and allow him to experience the difference between a life with your consistent presence and a life without it. Space also allows you to reconnect with yourself, your intuition, and your own emotional needs, which often get buried when you are too focused on someone else. When you step back, you begin to see things clearly. You start recognizing the patterns you ignored, the red flags you excused, the emotional labor you carried alone. You begin to ask yourself, not, will he miss me, but do I miss myself in this connection? And that is the kind of self-awareness that changes everything. Because the moment you return to yourself, your glow changes. Your energy becomes grounded. Your attraction becomes effortless. You become the version of yourself that he was drawn to in the first place, the woman who had her own world, her own dreams, her own joy, her own identity that did not depend on his validation. The beautiful thing about space is that it creates a contrast, and contrast reveals truth. If a man genuinely cares, space does not push him away. It pulls him forward. It triggers his desire to reconnect, to understand, to participate, to show up in a way that aligns with what you truly deserve. If he does not care, if he is unwilling, unavailable, or emotionally detached, space makes that clear too. And that clarity saves you months, even years of confusion and emotional exhaustion. Either way, space gives you answers that words alone cannot give. It shows you where his heart actually stands, not where his excuses try to convince you it is. Space is also a form of emotional self-respect. It is a way of saying, without anger or confrontation, I will not overextend myself for someone who does not meet me halfway. And that kind of energy is magnetic. It is powerful. Because when a woman respects herself, a man either rises to meet her or falls out of her life. There is no middle ground. Space forces alignment. It forces honesty. It forces him to step into effort instead of relying on your forgiveness or your emotional generosity to carry the connection for both of you. But perhaps the most transformative part of creating space is the shift it creates inside you. As you step back, you start pouring energy into the areas of your life that expand you instead of drain you. You reconnect with your passions. You reconnect with your peace. You reconnect with the parts of yourself that feel alive, grounded, fulfilled. And the more you nourish yourself, the less you crave the crumbs of inconsistency from anyone else. That is when true power returns. Because the woman who chooses herself first is the woman who becomes unforgettable. Not because she tried to be, but because she embodies a kind of strength, grace, and emotional independence that stays in a man's mind long after the moment ends. Space is not about punishing him. It is about honoring you. And the moment you embody that truth, you stop chasing love and start attracting the kind that recognizes your worth without needing to lose you to see it. When you begin to radiate confidence from a place that is real, not performative, not exaggerated, not forced, you create a gravitational pull that is impossible to ignore, because confidence is not about walking into a room loudly. It is about walking into a room with a sense of inner peace, knowing that you belong there without needing anyone to validate your presence. Confidence is the foundation of how people treat you, how they perceive you, and how they respond to your energy. And what makes it so powerful in relationships is that confidence is not about trying to impress a man. It is about being so genuine, so grounded in who you are, that he cannot help but pay attention. There is something irresistible about a woman who is comfortable in her own skin, a woman who doesn't shrink herself to appear likable, and doesn't inflate herself to appear superior, but instead stands exactly as she is, fully present, fully expressive, fully authentic. Confidence speaks before you say a word. It shows up in your posture, your tone, your choices, your boundaries, your willingness to walk away from situations that do not honor your worth. When a woman carries confidence, she doesn't plead for love. She doesn't chase validation. She doesn't bend her values out of fear of being alone. Instead, she communicates through her actions that she is a whole person with or without anyone's approval. That level of self-assurance does something powerful to a man. It challenges him. It inspires him. It awakens something inside him that makes him want to rise to meet her level, to show up with the same consistency, the same depth, the same emotional maturity that she naturally brings to the connection. Confidence also changes the dynamic of attraction. Many women believe that being overly accommodating or excessively giving will make a man stay, but confidence teaches you that true connection grows not when you offer everything, but when you offer yourself with intention, clarity, and emotional alignment. A confident woman does not fear losing a man by having standards. She knows that the right man will be drawn to her because of those standards, not despite them. She understands that her boundaries are not barriers, they are invitations for healthier love, because only someone who genuinely values her will be willing to step into that space with respect. That kind of energy creates trust, stability, and attraction that goes beyond physical chemistry. It creates emotional safety, and men crave emotional safety more than they ever admit. Confidence affects communication too. When you speak with confidence, you do not talk to be heard, you talk to be understood. You express your needs clearly without guilt. You express your feelings honestly without fear. You express your concerns calmly without turning pain into performance. A confident woman doesn't use silence as punishment or anger as intimidation. She uses clarity as connection. And because of that, her voice carries weight, her words matter. Her presence becomes something he listens to, not out of obligation, but out of genuine respect and admiration. You become a woman whose emotional truth carries power, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. Confidence also transforms the way you respond to disappointment. Instead of internalizing rejection as a reflection of your value, you begin to see it as a form of redirection, a simple reminder that not every door is meant for you. You stop personalizing someone's inconsistency. You stop blaming yourself for someone's emotional unavailability. A confident woman knows that her worth is constant, even when someone else fails to recognize it. And that mindset changes everything. It frees you. It protects you. It allows you to move through relationships with grace instead of desperation, with patience instead of panic, with understanding instead of attachment to outcomes. This emotional stability is incredibly attractive to men because it shows them that your happiness is not dependent on their actions alone. You are a partner, not a prisoner of your insecurities. Confidence also influences the way you carry your physical presence, not in the sense of beauty standards or perfection, but in the sense of embodiment. A woman who is confident in her body, her voice, her existence radiates a charm that feels warm, natural, inviting. Men are captivated by a woman who feels at home within herself. When you laugh freely, speak passionately, move with ease, you create moments that stay with him long after he leaves. It is not about looking perfect. It is about feeling connected to yourself in a way that makes everything you do feel effortless. Confidence is magnetic because it signals emotional independence, self-awareness, and inner strength, qualities that men associate with long-term attraction and deep compatibility. But perhaps the most powerful part of confidence is how it reshapes your relationship with love itself. When you believe in your worth, you stop chasing bare minimum love. You stop settling for inconsistent effort. You stop nurturing relationships that drain your spirit. Instead, you begin to choose love that feels aligned, mutual, stable, and emotionally healthy. You start prioritizing men who respect you, who communicate with you, who show up with intention. A confident woman does not fear walking away because she knows that walking away from the wrong man is what creates space for the right one. And when a man sees that you value yourself that highly, it changes how he approaches you. He becomes more thoughtful, more attentive, more present, because he knows that he is interacting with a woman whose love is precious, whose time is valuable, and whose heart is not something to be mishandled. Confidence creates a dynamic where a man no longer sees you as an option, but as a rare presence, someone he wants to protect, cherish, and commit to. Not because you asked him to, but because your energy makes him want to. Confidence is not just attractive, it is transformative, and when you embrace it fully, love begins to feel like something that aligns with your worth rather than something you constantly have to fight for. When you master the art of emotional independence, something extraordinary happens inside you, something that completely shifts the